Good day, I'm Glenn O'Kray. I'm a member of the Dearborn Historical Commission, and I'd like to welcome you to this edition of Through the Arsenal Gates. We'd like to interview people who have made history, are making history, and will make history. Today we have Linda Hallick, who has made history, is making history, and will make history.
I hope so. I hope so.
Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Tell us where you were born.
I was born in Connecticut. My parents, my father was born in Iowa, but parents immigrated to Connecticut and became part of the hatting industry in Connecticut. So I was born and raised there.
The hatting industry.
Hatting,
wow.
yeah.
Cool. Now, tell us about how your family ended up in the U.S.
So both of my grandfathers immigrated here in the late 1800s. As far as we can determine with their some of the documents we've been able to find. My one grandfather, my mother's father, 1903, we definitely have papers, but we think he came earlier than that. And they came because both were from Lebanon in the same area. There was no work for young men. There was nothing that they could do to further their career. So they came here really looking for opportunities, just like all immigrants have come to America looking for opportunities. And they were peddlers. Both of them were peddlers when they first came here. And so my mother's father stayed a peddler for quite a while and then became a farmer. And my dad's father was a peddler and then moved to Connecticut and became part of the hatting industry. So they did what they came to do, which was to make a better life for their families.
Now, peddlers, like, what did they peddle?
Selling all kinds of wares, whatever pots and pans and dishes and whatever you needed in your house. And so they're entrepreneurial. And even today we know that they're entrepreneurial. The Arab community is a very entrepreneurial group. And that's what they did when they came here.
Very good. Now, where in Lebanon is your family from?
So they are from the Bekaa Valley in a town, both of them are from a town called Bint Jbeil, which is still there. And it is a fairly substantial sized community from what I understand. Unfortunately, I've never been to Lebanon. I know, it's very sad.
Very disappointed.
I know, very sad that I have never been there. My dad had two sisters, full sisters, who were left there as infants when my grandparents immigrated here and never came to this country. My dad did not meet them until they were born, my dad was born in 15, they were born before my dad, so they were born like 1909, 1908. He didn't meet them till 1947 was the first time he ever met his full sisters. They never came here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how did your family happen to go to Iowa?
They knew, my grandfather knew people there. And so, like most immigrant groups, you go to where you know someone. And so he knew someone there who said, come here, you can make a living here, you can peddle, you can do all that. And then again, he quickly turned that into farming. And then ultimately went from farming, he owned a tavern, he owned a bar. He owned a bar in Iowa, in Cedar Rapids. Never had a drink in his life, but owned a bar.
I was going to say, how do you reconcile being a Muslim and owning a bar?
I can probably name you a dozen people who are Muslim who've never had a drink who own bars, because it just said you can't drink. And my grandfather said, I've never had a drink. Doesn't say I can't serve it, I just can't drink it.
Yeah.
And so never did.
Yeah. In your youth, did you have a significant person in your life? A teacher or one of your relatives?
My dad had a mother and two sisters who lived in the town we lived in. I would spend one night a weekend with my grandmother from the time she passed away when I was 10. So every weekend I would spend one night a weekend with her. My other cousin would spend the other night. And so it grounded me in, she didn't speak any English. And so it grounded me on what it was to hear Arabic, although I never learned it. My parents both spoke it, but never spoke to us. They used it to tell secrets. I could understand my grandmother and then lost all that after she passed away. And my dad's sisters were significant in my life also. They were in our house. They never married. They were in our house all the time. And so for us, family and having family in and out all the time was just part of our normal life, as well as extended family that I didn't know whether, I think I was a teenager before I knew which people were really my aunts and uncles and not just ones I called aunt and uncle. Yeah. And I had 50 of them. I'd be like, are they really? And that's the same with my kids today. Teachers, I had several teachers who I would say were impactful. My brother and I were just talking about one the other day who changed so many lives of kids just because he believed in all of us to be the very best that we could be in everything we wanted to do, regardless of whether it was outside of our realm of expertise at that point. Just go for it. He was wonderful. So many people, many. And I think growing up, we grew up in a housing development, so all the families coming back, the men were returning from war, and so they were all duplexes, side-by-side duplexes. It was a kind of an enclosed neighborhood, and every household had these fathers coming home and little kids. And so if I had to tell you, it was probably the most idyllic way to grow up. And so many of those people also had an impact on us because you belonged to all those families. No mother was beyond telling you what to do or directing what you were supposed to be doing during the day. And none of the mothers worked. And so it was, I say that I lived in a world that I wish everybody could know growing up.
Very
so
good.
all of that.
Yeah, yeah. Now, your dad was in the Army?
My dad was in the Army, and his brother was in the Army. His brother was killed in World War II, his only brother. And so for us, there have been times in my life when, as an Arab and a Muslim, people have questioned loyalty. And I've said to people, you have no right to question my family. Don't dare question my family. We gave. My dad gave his only brother. My grandmother gave her son. Don't ever question our loyalty to this nation.
Yeah, that I really get upset when I hear
I know.
stuff like
Me
that.
too.
Yeah. Tell the audience what your values are, Linda.
Values. That's a big word, values. I think that honesty, integrity. My dad used to say, your word is your bond. And he taught us that from the time that we were kids. If you give your word about something, then you better make sure you follow through and that becomes how you live your life. That you don't promise things and then not deliver, that you live your life with integrity and lead it ethically. You look at what you do and know what the impact might be on other people. And then make sure that you aren't hurting people. So our values were rooted in in not only how our family behaved and how our family was with each other, but how we then were expected to be in the greater world. And so in today's world, I would say it's one of, and my dad always said, you have to give back to the city you live in. And he was a very, very active Republican in Connecticut. I can remember him signing me up to work at Republican headquarters no matter what was going to happen in my world. He wouldn't be necessarily today's signing me up for things, but he believed that you had to contribute to the community you lived in. And for me, that's been a really big part of what I have done in Dearborn, or how I feel about living in Dearborn, that I have to give back to this town that gives so much to me.
Wonderful, very good. Now, you're Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
Educate our audience. What is the difference between Shia and Sunni? And are their values different?
You're going to ask me a loaded question, Glenn O'Kray. You know, until I moved to Dearborn, I'd never heard those words before. And all of a sudden, I'm coming from Connecticut and I hear those words. And I'm like, I don't even know. I can remember calling my mother and saying, what is that? And she said, why are you asking me? And she was not happy that I was asking, because she didn't understand why there should have been the question. It goes back historically into who was supposed to lead Islam after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. So it was born out of a political event. I think the values are very much the same. People want to make it so much more divisive than it actually can be, although some people do make the distinction and want to divide. I worked with someone in the schools for years who, in my classroom, who after 4 years together, he looked at me and said, are you Sunni or Shia? And he was Muslim. And I said, why? He said, because all the years of teaching, I can't figure it out. And I said, you have no reason to figure it out. And so for me, I say, I am a Muslim, we are Muslim, and I don't want to divide us. I want to make sure that, and I don't necessarily say that. Now, having said that, if I tell someone where my family is from in Lebanon, they will know immediately whether I'm Sunni or Shia, because it breaks out geographically in Lebanon of where those pockets are. But I don't ever feel a need to have to say that. And I've gone to mosques, both Sunni and Shia, what would be considered Sunni and Shia mosques. My dearest friends are all of it, but we all feel the same about it. They don't see me, I hope not, differently.
So Bin Shabil is Shia?
Yes.
All right, as is most of Dearborn?
Most of Dearborn, which is unusual because in the world, 90% of Muslims are Sunni. But in Dearborn, that is the opposite. And so it just happens to be where people settled after the civil war in Lebanon.
Yeah.
But I don't like the distinction.
Okay. Well, I reflect on the issue that the civil war in Lebanon has had such a major impact on Dearborn.
Totally.
It's kind of like, how can something a half world away have an impact? But it obviously did.
When I worked in adult education, I was in charge of the ESL program for adults, and I would say to people, I read the newspaper differently than many of you, because when I read the newspaper, no matter where it is in the world, I know that whatever's happening will impact me tomorrow, because people will be coming to Dearborn. And so I would look at world events where there was war going on and conflict going on, and I'd say, those students will soon be mine. There will be people who will be coming here.
Yeah.
We've always been that way in Dearborn.
Yeah.
People have forgotten that we really are a gateway for so many immigrant groups. I had students from 45 countries that were living in this city, and people would say, no, that's not true. And I say, no, it really was true. And so much of that still is reflected in who we are as a city.
Yeah. So what is your best Dearborn story?
Oh, best meaning, the happiest, best meaning the most,
You name the category.
Best. I think that I have many stories of struggle through time as Dearborn evolved into the community that it is, and still evolving into the community it is today. But those struggles, I think, were good for the city in so many ways, because I think it opened up dialogue with neighbors and made us talk to one another about what and who we were and what our beliefs were about things. And so those were really hard times, but I think I look today at the city that we live in, and I am happy and hopeful that we are finding a footing in this city to be one city and to make this place the best place that we can be. And so I've gone through that. I had a neighbor 2 doors down from me who moved in. I was the first person on our street that was Arab. And I'm going back to the early 1970s. But a family moved in 2 doors down from me, and after they had been in their house for 3 nights, someone burned a Star of David and acid on their lawn, their entire front lawn. And the father came to me and said, "What does that mean?" And I said, I don't know what that means. What message is someone sending to you? Those were really difficult times. And those kinds of things happened again and again in little tiny ways. But in today's world, I walk in Dearborn today, and people are joyful about being here. And so for me, I think that we've come a long way, and we're a better city for where we are today.
Yeah. Every now and then I reflect on the fact that East Dearborn was falling on some rough times, and if it hadn't been for the Arab immigrant community moving in, it would have gone downhill. So yeah.
I lived at Warren in Wyoming, and so I lived in the farthest corner of this city that you could live in the east side. And I've said to people, I could have bought Warren Avenue for a song a long time ago. Could have bought the whole street. And then you look today, and the future development that's going to be coming, the mayor has secured a whole lot of money to be able to work on Warren Avenue. And so that's going to be a really wonderful change and upgrade for that region. And you're right, it would have gone away. We were losing Warren Avenue, that whole area we were losing.
Yeah. Reflect on the mayor.
So I served on Plan Commission for 31 years. I served under 3 mayors. So I was very lucky to have done that. I was first appointed by John O'Reilly Sr., and I can remember saying to him when he called me, I said, I don't even know what Plan Commission does. But he had also begun a committee, which most people don't even know about, called the Cultural Development Committee, and that committee ran for a number of years. And we met every week. There were a group of us who came from the community, from the city government, the aim of which was to try to solve neighborhood problems, so that as conflict was erupting in neighborhoods, he wanted a mechanism by which we could go into neighborhoods, talk to people, talk to neighbors, talk to who was having conflict, and solve those issues. It was kind of behind the scenes, but he felt very strongly that he could not just let things evolve without having the ability to step in, without it being official city government, but kind of quasi-government. And so he appointed me first, and that's where I got to know him. And then I was appointed by Mayor Guido, who at some point in time then did not reappoint me. Got angry at me over some issues and did not reappoint me, and then again reappointed me because he had some pushback from some of the community about putting me back on there, and then again from John O'Reilly Jr. So I was fortunate to have served under those mayors. This mayor, I wish that I would serve under this mayor in many ways. Not saying we have not had our disagreements about things, because we have, but I think he brings to this city a forward-thinking way of dealing with issues. I am happy to see he's dealing with public health issues, which I think we really have to deal with in this city. I think he is very forthcoming about many things. I've had my disagreements with him, and he's listened and taken whatever I've handed out to him with regard to criticism. I am hopeful. I think he and I'm not going to say anything he didn't say publicly. He was a speaker at Morley, and someone asked him about the long-term plan for being mayor. And his comment was, this city tends to have legacy mayors. That is not me. I will never be a legacy mayor in this city. And he went on to explain what his plan was. And so I think for him, he has a plan, and he actually has a timeline in his head about how long he would like to remain mayor and make as much change and positive impact on this city, and then move on to whatever that may be.
Tell us what he's going to do next.
I don't know. What I think he's going to do, he's never said, at least not to me, he's never said. I think he will run for governor, ultimately. And he might be saying, there's no way I want that, I don't know. Or a U.S. position, a U.S. Congress, I don't know. Yeah. But he's certainly not, he said he will never be a legacy mayor in this city.
Right. I just think he's doing a great job.
Yeah.
I have told him that he has the potential of being the best mayor Dearborn has ever had.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think he's also bringing with him, he's bringing young people along, and he is making sure that they feel attached to this city. And I think for a lot of people, young people for many years didn't feel any attachment to this city. But I think young people do now, and that makes me hopeful for the future. Because those of us who are older, we need to pass all that on. Yeah. Or else, if we don't get young people volunteering and involved and taking care, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Now, Linda, when you were growing up, what did you think you wanted to be when you were 12 years old?
A nurse.
A
nurse. I was going to be a nurse. That was my...
What happened?
When I was 16, I had surgery on my legs, which put me in bed for 3 months, and I was a terrible patient, and realized that if I had to take care of me, I probably would not have been good. And then I decided at some point, I didn't have anything in mind. And then, right or wrong, I got engaged at 18 and married just before my 20th birthday. And said, all I want to do is be a housewife. I mean, that was really what I wanted to do. And then through time, then went back to school once I had 2 kids and I was in my 30s, and went back to school. So my plan at 12 changed because of an event in my life, and then everything just changed again and went to nothing.
Okay. When you were a young person, did you work?
My father, I was very spoiled. I had a dad, I was the only girl. And so I was very spoiled by my dad, who one Christmas paid me to stay home with my mother instead of going to work with all my friends who went to work at Woolworth, by the way. And he paid me to stay home. I had one job when I was in high school only because one of my aunts worked there, and then he let me do that. But for the most part, no, I didn't. Right. It's a little town in Connecticut, and so it was a little town.
What is the name
Danbury.
of the
It's a big town now. It was a little town.
Yeah.
So no, I didn't work. But I got married so young too. Yeah. When was I working? Yeah.
Now, did you get married too early?
Gave me 2 wonderful children, so no, but yes. And I tell young people today, I'm so blessed to have 2 wonderful kids and 4 great-grandkids, 4 wonderful...
2 wonderful kids, how many unwonderful kids?
Oh, some days. Some days. And 4 wonderful grandchildren. But in looking back, what I wish I had done was gone away to college, had college done, learned who I was before I decided to take on a husband and a family, because I, at 20, was not the same person I was at 30. Yeah. And so I wish I had not. And I tell young people, someone was talking yesterday about a young man who's 26, and his grandmother thinks he should get engaged. I said, leave him alone. I said, give him a couple more years. If he's not ready, what is the big deal? I mean, hopefully people will be married forever, although our divorce rate would tell you differently. So give him a little time to mature.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, you're tied into Access. First of all, tell everybody what Access is.
So the Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services, long name, 52 years and counting. It is a social service agency, but it goes way beyond that now, because we are now not only local, we are now national. We have organizations we would call sister organizations around the country where we help Arab organizations learn how to become a greater organization in their own communities, how to impact their own communities. We also have our scope of services in today's world is amazing. We are in the process right now of building a drug recovery center. We've just broken grounds on that. So where we started, when I started with Access, I started as I led their a committee there, and then went on to become the president 3 times, possibly 4. None of us can remember, of the organization through time. We were in one room at the Joe Hammoud Center, which is in the South End, and then we went to 3 rooms down there. And then from there, we've now gone to, we have 6 buildings and expanding all the time. 500 employees today.
Oh, wow.
At that time, we had 2. We had 2 at that, paid employees at that time. So and what most people don't realize is about 50% of the people we serve are not Arab. It is not exclusive to the Arab community. And so people really come from all over to take part in our services and our programs. And so we are really an organization that reaches out to other communities to make sure people get whatever services they need. I'm really proud of the organization.
Good. And who was the leader of Access when you started?
So Aliyah Hassan was Ishmael Ahmed's grandmother, and he became our paid director. She was actually the first director, unpaid. And when she came to me one day and said, "I want you to be the president of the board." And I said, "I'm not doing it." And she said, "I will be with you every step of the way. I will stand next to you and I will do it, but you need to do this. We need women in leadership roles." And she did. She walked with me every step of the way. She helped me. She worked with me. She watched me cry. She watched me laugh. And Ish became our director, our paid director. And so he was the one who then took the organization to the next level.
Okay. Now, how has the organization changed through the years? You said you're serving not only Arabs but others as well. Any other ways, and the drugs, any other way that the organization has changed through the years?
Our ability to provide services at the beginning really was social services. If you came in and you had your gas bill and you didn't know how to read it, or you came in and you needed papers for your child to go to school, and you didn't know what to do, it was that. Today, we have everything from all full medical services, psychological services, mental health services, still the social service drop-in areas. We run one of the largest employment centers in the area. And so the scope of the work we do is mammoth today compared to then. And that has come, one thing we knew early on as an organization, that we had to be collaborative. We could not work in isolation. And some organizations, community organizations, that continued to try to work alone didn't make it. And we made it and flourished because we were able to collaborate with lots of other organizations and communities to pool resources together, to provide services, and to learn about each other by doing that. So I think in that regard, we have continued to grow and become who we are today because we learned that lesson early on. We couldn't be isolationists.
Okay. You have worked as a teacher. Tell us about that.
When I first graduated, I applied to teach a class in ESL to adults. And I went in for the interview, and when I left the interview, he hired me to direct the program. I'm not sure how that happened. To this day, I still don't know how that happened. And so I became the director of the ESL program for adults in Dearborn. And from there, we had like 4 classes in the city. From there, we went on to be the largest program in the state of Michigan. But I also was responsible for Garden City and Melvindale programs as part of adult basic education programs. Then from there, and we were in 10 locations. So we were at St. Sarkis and Laurie School and Fordson, Dearborn High, Littlefield Church. I mean, we were everywhere in the city. And then from there, I opened a job training center on the corner of Warren and Miller. And that, again, was part of Dearborn Schools. And it was massive. We had 500 students a day in there learning job skills. And it was probably one of the best times of my life in terms of work. And then I decided that some things were happening with regard to how the state of Michigan was dealing with funding for adults, and that I could not abide by some of the things that were happening, and went into the classroom, and I became a 5th grade bilingual teacher. So get off the plane and come on to me as a 5th grader.
Tell us about the dynamics of teaching English as a second language. What issues do students have?
So, people the thing I used to hear all the time, my grandparents didn't have any help when they came here and they all learned English, and why does anybody need help? Although, same old stories. And that's really not the case. Many of their grandparents, like mine, never became literate in English, and there were a lot of jobs available to them. Look at Ford Motor Company. You did not need to be literate to go to work in Ford Motor Company. That's not the case in today's world. And so the struggle to make sure, it's not a struggle, the aim is to make sure that these kids not only learn English, but they are literate and can go forward, go to college or a trade and learn English enough to get a job. And so the struggle becomes convincing people that there is a value and a necessity for kids and adults to be given some time to learn, but to have the support they need to be able to learn. Studies have shown it takes about 7 years to become literate. Now, if you are a 60-year-old person coming to this country, it's going to take you longer to learn English. I mean, you're going to have a harder struggle to do that. But with kids, it takes about 7 years for kids. They do pick it up, but I always used to tell people when they tell me that story, I'd say, if you went to Hamtramck years ago, the #1 selling newspaper was in Polish, not in English in Hamtramck. And so the stories that you tell about they were literate, they were not. Yeah. They were not literate in English. Yeah. Those are the struggles.
What about some of the psychological issues that new immigrants bring with them?
Today in Dearborn, we're a sad city. We are a very sad city in today's world. And so depending on what's going on in the world and in their own home countries, I don't know that people really sometimes know that when something is happening in Serbia or Syria or wherever it's happening, that we have fellow neighbors here who are impacted by all of that. We need to reach a hand out because they may be suffering and have family. Today, Dearborn is, we're in mourning in Dearborn. So many people here are in mourning on a daily basis, and I don't see that that's going to end anytime soon. And so reach out to a neighbor and, understand that they may not verbalize it, mm-hmm. but that all of us are sad.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any suggestions on how to get Arabs and, quote, Americans kind of talking more? Communicate more.
There was a woman who was doing coffee things here, and I've been looking for her this year, and I haven't seen her. I would found her on Facebook. I never went to anything she was having, but she would have like a coffee thing at one of the coffee shops here, and people were going, both Arab and non-Arab were going and having coffee. We need to make more opportunities for people to come together, but you really have to do that as an invite. When you just put it out there, people are shy to come and take part in those kind of things. We have to find a way to actually reach out and say, come and join me. I know that there are groups around here. I went to something not long ago at the Episcopal Church. Somebody reached out to me and said, come join us. Those kinds of things are impactful, but it has to really come from an invite to something, because being left to its own devices, we stay pretty much isolated from each other.
Okay. Linda, are there any aspects of your life that we've not touched on that you think bear mentioning?
Yeah, I think that those are, other than being a mom and a grandmother, are, and in this chapter of my life, which, I always say that I'm still waiting for what is unfolding for me. I live at Morley now, at Morley Manor, and that has become a whole new chapter in my life, and I'm very involved there. And so I hope that I always have that desire to be part of and active in whatever I'm doing. So who knows what that may be. I'm talking about walking the Camino Trail in Spain next year.
Oh,
I don't know.
I love it. Good.
I don't know. There may be a lot of things ahead of me.
Yeah. Life is short. What do you want people to say about you when you go to the next life?
That I was truthful and kind and never hurt anybody deliberately.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this session of Through the Arsenal Gates. If you did, tell all your friends and relatives. If you didn't, just keep it to yourself. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Linda, for joining us.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you.
Yeah.